Welcome to the second video in our NextJS coding blog. In this video we'll be setting up the blogs. So you can see on the home page we have three MDX files that have been rendered to the screen here. And if I click on any one of these cards here, I get navigated to a blog post page. And we can also see that we have syntax highlighting, so we're using highlight.js for this. And of course our dark mode and light mode still works as we set up in the previous video. So let's go ahead and get started. And we will be using MDX with TypeScript. So MDX allows us to render components. So this whole section here at the top here, this is a component that's been embedded into our MDX file. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by running our project with a npm run dev. Look in the package JSON and we see we've got this npm run dev command. This will start our server on localhost 3000. So we should get the current version of our page. So right now, that's just localhost/3000. The routing doesn't do anything just yet. So what we want to do is we just want to install a few packages. So let's go ahead and run, and I should have done this before I started the server, npm install marked, gray matter, next MDX remote, and also highlight.js. So marked allows us to pass our markdown file and render it into the HTML. Gray matter takes the metadata at the top of our MDX file and allows us to use that. Next MDX remote allows us to make our MDX files and use them, and highlight.js is the syntax highlighting. So what I want to start off by doing, simply I'll just copy some of these MDX files that I've created earlier, and then I'm going to place them into a folder, and I'll name that file or that folder articles. And then I'm just going to go ahead here and open this up, and I'm just going to go ahead, and this is on the other screen, I'm just going to go ahead and paste these articles in here. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to copy some of the images in. So the images, they're in the public folder in images. So let me just go navigate to my directory here. In public, we want to have a new folder called images. And within this folder, we want to have another folder called articles. And I have my 3 YouTube thumbnails that I'm using for my images here. So you can just copy these from the GitHub repository, or you can use your own images and markdown files. But just to get a feel for what the markdown file is, if we go to the articles here, firstly, this is just simple markdown file. So we got this MDX extension here. So this part here is the metadata, or sometimes is referred to as the front matter. And this is the descriptor for the article itself. And you have things here like the title, the date, the image, which points to the images folder that we just created. So it automatically looks in the public folder, then it looks in the images, then articles here as specified in the main image URL. And these can be called whatever you want. And then we also have an excerpt here. So that's just often a 1-line, 2-line summary of the article, and then here's the actual article itself. So that's regular MD, but the MDX extension does everything the MD extension will do. But I've also got this MDX file, and you can see here that we've got this component in here. So we will need to set this up, but it's really cool because you can pass things in like the props, the title, the string, the date string, the URL, and then you can go ahead and you can just write your article however you want. When you need to use components, you can use a component. And then also we've got this here, which is the syntax highlighting we just saw earlier. So we need to make a few of these things work, and I think we'll just start off by navigating into the pages, and we'll create a file here, and we'll put it in a new folder, and we'll call it blog. So recall that when we load up the page, it's loading up the index page here, and there's also this app page here, and we'll get rid of some of this stuff. But basically Next.js, it renders everything in the pages section. So index will just render the home page here, but then we want to have the URL /blog, and then in there we'll have / whatever the name of our page is. So you could create unique pages in here if you wanted to, but we want to be a little more abstract, and we can just create a file here. And this might look a little strange at first. We have these 2 square brackets here, and then we have we put the word slug in there, and then this is just going to be the TSX file extension here. So these square brackets here, this will get picked up by the Next.js, by the compiler, and it will be able to pass the slug dynamically based on our article name. So we'll have /blog /angular or /blog /nest.js. Obviously we're going to need to set this up. So I'm just going to use a snippet here, and I'm going to get a React arrow functional component, and I might get the other one, React a functional component where it has the export default. Now this slug here, we don't want to have this name like that. Basically what we would prefer is, and actually what I might do here is I might use RFC instead, because we're going to have some other exports. But we don't want to call this slug, we can just call this article. So there's no real need for this to be an arrow function here. So we can just go ahead and import from React. And actually we don't even need that. Because that snippet was for pure React, but Next.js will handle that for us. So what we want to do is, this is going to be the page of the blog post itself. So not all of the blog post, just the singular blog post. And we need to render the name, and we have this method in Next.js, and it's called get static paths. So we can go ahead and we can export this constant variable, get static paths, and that's of the type get static paths from Next. And this is just going to be an async function, and what it's going to do for us is, this is where we're going to look at our files in the articles here, and we're going to map them based on their file name to the path name, which will be dynamically rendered. So to be able to do that, what we want to do is, first we want to import 2 things. we want to go ahead and import fs from fs, and we also want to import path from path. Now we are creating a static blog, and you will notice that these function or these fs and path libraries, they're from Node. However, because we're using Next.js, inside of these Next.js functions such as get static paths, we can use these, and then when we build our project out, it will render this for us, and then it'll go ahead and render it into static content for us. So we just get the benefits of being able to use this backend language here without actually needing to run a server after it's built. So we can go ahead and we can use these utilities here. So I'm going to create a constant variable, and I'm going to call it the articles directory. And what this will be is we can just go ahead and from the root of our project, we know that there is a articles folder. So we can just go ahead and use this syntax here, path.join, and we can just go ahead and get the articles folder. So this is from the base where the package.json is at the root level. So now that we've got access, well, we're pointing to this location, we can use that, and we can get the files from there using the file system. And there's a method called read _sync, and it can read the directory of the articles directory that we just created. So we can get that. Now, obviously there's going to be a bunch of files, and we're going to need to get the paths of each of the files. So let's go ahead and say, have a variable here called paths, and we'll just take the files and then we'll map through them. And for each file name, what we'll do, which is a string, what we'll return here is we'll have an object, and we'll have something called params, and nested within params we'll have the slug, which will just be nothing more than the file name here, and we just want to get rid of the MDX extension. So again, we want to go to blog/angular or blog/ whatever our file name is but we want to get rid of the MDX, so we can just go ahead and replace that .mdx, and we can just replace it with an empty string. So we've looped through all of the files, and we've assigned a variable paths with the param slug without the MDX extension there. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this semicolon here. So basically what we want to return from get static paths is we just want to return all of those paths that we've just created, but we also want to have a fallback. Now the fallback, if you've noticed with Next.js applications, if you go to a route that you haven't, it's not routed and it's not in this pages section, you'll go to the 404 page, and this is where you can have like your own custom 404 page. So I'm just going to put the fallback to false because basically if you access the path or the slug that doesn't exist, you go to the 404 page. So if you don't have this, you won't be going to the 404 page. You'll just get some weird behavior. But the reason that we've got these paths here is because we need to, there's another function in Next.js, like get static paths, and it's called, and I'll just copy this part here, get static props. And we're going to need to be able to use this in our static props. So the way Next.js works is it looks at these functions like get static paths, and the return of that will actually be passed into this get static props function, and the return of this get static props, this will actually be a prop that goes into our function. So right now we've got this article function which represents the dynamic page, the blog post with the dynamic slug. So we need to get that slug dynamically, and then we need to set the props for it such that we can consume it within this function. So this is going to be of the type get static props, and this comes from Next.js as well, from the same spot. So what we can do here is, well, firstly what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a type here, and I'm going to call it params, and it's going to be essentially a record of params, where each param has a key of a string, and it could map to anything. So basically in the context of our application here, what that means for us is, well, we can actually specify the get static props type with the params here, and then it can take in what we've got back from here. So we get back the params. So we're interested in this part here. So we're getting back the paths, and this fallback just isn't related to that. But the paths is nothing more than having the params with a slug in it. So we can actually go ahead and destructure the paths that get passed in by destructuring to get the params, and then we can actually go one layer deeper, and we can go ahead and we can get the slug. And we have to specify, because we're in TypeScript here, the particular type of that. So after this here, we can just say, okay, this is of the type params here. So now that we've sorted that out, let's go ahead and get our props. What we want to do is we essentially want to get the what we want to do is we have these MDX files, and we want to pass this content here into our page. So what we need to do is we can just say, we can have a variable here, and we'll call this article, and we'll use the file system once again to read the files synchronously. And then I'm just going to pass in path.join. I'm going to take the articles directory, and I'm now able to get the specific article that we're after, because we have the slug for that article. So I can just go ahead and pass in the slug here, and I can plus on this .mdx file extension, because we did actually remove the .mdx extension, but to read the file that's corresponding to that slug, we'll need to add that back in. So what we can do is we can actually use a little bit of destructuring here. We can say we can get some data and get some content, and this is using the front matter package. So it's actually gray matter. Import. So import that. So we installed this earlier. So we can import matter from gray matter. That will get this front matter here. And we can also go ahead and import a function called serialize, and it's not from V8, it's from next-MDX-remote /serialize. And we can also import MDX remote from MDX remote, or next MDX remote. So we're going to use both of those. So we can actually use that gray matter to use the matter functionality, and we can just go ahead and pass in our MDX file, and we can pass that into matter, and then it's going to get the data, which we can rename to metadata, i.e. the stuff between these three hyphens, and then the actual content itself, which is everything else. So we can go ahead and we can get, so right now this content is you know, it's just being read here, but we need to actually pass that. So we need to serialize that, and that's where we use the MDX library function serialize. And you'll notice that we have this async here. We also have async here. But basically the reason why is because it takes a little bit of time to do some of these reading of files and passing of files and stuff like that. So to get the MDX source, we can go ahead and we can await. And we should note that although it takes a little bit of time and we're to build in the first place, because we're using these back-end functionalities like reading the file system and, you know, passing them and waiting for things to happen, NextJS, when we export it statically, it will do all that at build time, but we're going to export a static project, so it will already be built. So things that might take a little bit of time or a bit slow to load, or anything that takes time, we won't worry about that. We'll just have a really fast site after it's published, so we don't have to worry about that. But we can use this await serialize function here, or method, and we can just go ahead and get our content. So we can actually get our content here, and we can actually pass in as a second argument something called scope, and it allows us to pass through variables for the use in the MDX context. So we do have some of those metadata variables that we may be interested in using. So with that, we can just go ahead and return, and get state props. It just returns an object with props, and we can just specify the props that we're returning, which we'll call source, and then we'll just pass in this MDX source. And then we can use that in our page here. So we can say we can destructure that, and we get to get the source out. So we will need to get the type, and we can actually use a type built into Next called infer get static props type, where we pass in the type. So we have the type of get static props here, and it will actually just infer the type that we've returned here. So that's cool. Oh, it's just saying we haven't used it yet. That's okay. Now, what I will start off by doing is I'll just return something simple here. So just a simple div. And let's just give this some style. We'll give it a width of 600 pixels and a margin of auto just to center things. And this is where we can use the MDX remote component, which will take the source, so we can just go ahead and get that in there like that. And then we can say the components are equal to the components, and we do actually need to create that component here. So we're passing in this component here, blog header component. So we haven't actually made that just yet. So perhaps we'll go ahead and we'll just make that. So I'm just seeing if I have a components folder. I mustn't have created one just yet. So let's go ahead and create one. I want this in the root level. Well, a folder called components, and I'll just call this blog header.component, and it will need to be tsx. So let's use the RFC RAFCE. So blog header component here. Now we don't need React, but we will need to get the functional component with the props that we will create. So we'll just have an interface at the top of our file here with the props. So we'll just have the title, which is a string. We have the date string, which is also a string. And then we'll have something here called main image URL, which is also going to be the string. So we can just use some destructuring here. So I can just get the title in, the date string, and the main image URL. And what I will return here is, I might just grab this style here. That should be in here like that. I'll grab that style. I'll just put that in there like that. And then I'll just have a H1. And we'll come back to styling this in a subsequent video. For this video, I wanted to concentrate on, you know, having our blog posts using MDX and some syntax highlighting. So let's just go ahead and get something simple going. Now, I might also make the image 600 pixels. I won't need that margin of auto. We'll just get rid of the alt tag for now. And we'll just set the source of this equal to the main image URL. And then we'll just have a paragraph below this image to say posted on date string. Let's go ahead and just save that. So now we have access to this blog component here, the blog header component. So we can come back to our dynamic post page, and we can just actually, we can have above here a list of components. So we might be adding more. So let's just create a variable for that, and we'll just call it the blog header component. We'll go ahead and we'll bring that in, and then this will get rid of that error here for us. Now, for some strange reason, it's not inferring the static props type. In the example I did before, this wasn't coming up as an error, but we can actually just go ahead and see what that is. We can look at this MDX source here, and we can just go ahead and just copy this type here. So I'm just going to copy this type here, and we can just say this is going to be at the source here, and then we'll just need to import that here, and that should be okay. This should be redundant, but nevertheless we'll just have that there, and then we can just run a npm run dev just to see where we're up with things. We should be able to navigate to a /blog/ one of our article names, so /angular.mdx, but without the MDX. So here we are on our home page here, and if I go to /blog/angular, let's see what we get. So it is taking a little while to load, which may imply that there's an error. Oh, it's still compiling. So I thought that it wasn't working, but I realized I've put this home page, it's rendered in the blogs. So if you scroll down a little bit, so you see this header here, if you scroll down, you can actually see the blog post. Now, right now the syntax highlighting isn't working, and obviously this is on the main page here. So let's go ahead and fix that up. And I might start off by just going to the creating a header component. So it's the header's up the top, and then we're also able to navigate back. So right now we've got one component here. So let me make a header component. And I'm just going to use the arrow function with the export. And this will just be header component. Get rid of that. This is going to be of the type functional component coming from React. And then we can just go ahead and pass in some of our props here. We will have an interface for these props. One will be mode. So I believe we've set this up in the .tsx file here. So we essentially just want to move this into the header component here. So if we just take a look as a reminder of what the app component has, it has these page props, and we're setting this state here. Okay, so this is already created, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I thought I've created this before, so I'll move that. It's just I had it in the root of the project, so I'm just going to go ahead and move that to components here, and I'm going to update the imports here. And while that's loading, I might go ahead and I might delete this home module CSS file, because I just spotted that and we don't need that. So now if I just save that file, this is in the @tsx file here. Now we don't actually want the header component here. Well, actually we would want the header component there, but we want to remove the rest of the component back. But I might just go ahead and open up the header component here. So I'm able to import link from next/link, and that will give me access to making the icon, the home icon, into a link. Yeah, there we go. So this link is going to wrap the icon button, and that's just going to be there so we can return back to our home page. So we can just use the absolute path /, and then we can just have this pass href attribute here. So we can save this, and if we go to our @ file, we can just cut everything out from here, so everything within the box. We can take that, and then we can come to our home page here, and we can just go ahead and put it below here. Now we're going to need to have some of these imports, so let me just import these that we have here. I can get rid of these ones here now, and I can just come to the top here. We no longer need those styles there. Actually, I don't know what was in those. But let's just go ahead and do something like that and get rid of these. And let's just sort of hope it works. And I'm just going to get this mail icon as well. Now obviously we'll probably want to refactor this into a separate component, but I just want to get something working. So let's go ahead and import that. And let's just get rid of this class name here. Save that. Custom theme. So we've got this custom theme here. So let's also get that working. Actually, now I'm looking at it, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to put the color equal to warning here. Save that. Okay, so we can see this blog post page here. If I click on home, we can see this home thing here. dark mode still works. And if I navigate back to the blog Angular page, it will load that for us and the dark mode works. So I guess next we probably want to get this syntax highlight going. And there is that, for some reason in dev mode there's a little bit of a delay, but when we export the project, we're going to have some static HTML files, so things should just load pretty quick. So I think the next thing that I'd like to do is I would like to get highlight.js. So we've already installed this, but we want to consume it, and you can actually come to highlight.js.org/static/demo, and you can actually choose from all the different themes here. Now I personally like this VS 2015 theme because it's similar to Visual Studio Code, and then there's basic setup here. So it basically looks at all your code blocks, and if you look at the MDX file, by default this will create a code block with that HTML, and then we just need to style that. So we can do that in our slug page. So if we have a look at this page here, we just need to import a few things. So the first thing that we're going to need is the highlight, the package. So here it's the and we probably want to use a more modern syntax, but we will be using this highlight or HLJS. So let's just go ahead and type it out. So just below here, we'll get the import highlight.js from highlight.js, and you just click tab there. Now we're going to need a particular, we want TypeScript, and I believe you can do something like this, where in the lib you can get a list of all of the common languages, but you might only want a subset. So I'll probably be, in my blog, I'll probably mainly be using TypeScript, maybe some JavaScript, HTML and CSS, and then I'll just add more as I go, sort of thing. So I just want to get this sort of format here, and a list of all of the languages. You can just click on this file here, and you can see all of these, and then if you need a different language, you can just replace, /common with whatever it is, so /TypeScript or something like that. So what I can do is I can import TypeScript from, I'll just copy and paste that here, but rather than get it from common, I'm going to get it from languages, and you can look in the node modules as well, and just get that TypeScript there. I believe that's it. Highlight.js. Oh, so I just realized it's just complaining because we haven't used it. Now, I also want to get the theme, and you can get that in a similar way. I'm just going to, and again, you can look at the node modules if you wanted. You can just go ahead and import that. So that's from highlight.js or highlight.js /vs2015.css. So that's just going to load the CSS file in, and then it's just going to be applied. But we do have to just register the language, so we can use highlight.js, and there's a method here called register language, and then I'm putting in TypeScript here, and that's going to be the TypeScript that's referred to here. So I was just getting some errors here, and I just want to go ahead and do a npm install as a dev dependency at types/highlight.js. So I do this all the time. Whenever you get some package that doesn't, you know, you think it's not working, you can just get the types of that. And usually that does the trick, but we're still getting some sort of error. Cannot find module highlight.js or its corresponding type declarations. So when I installed this, I might have installed highlight.js instead of highlight.js. So I'm just going to do an npm uninstall of highlight.js and also at types highlight.js, because I don't think I need them. And then I'm just going to run an npm install highlight.js, and I'm putting the dot there. So now if I try run something, let's see if it works. And let's just have a look at the slug page, and we can see that it's now not erroring. So it should be okay now. Let's check it out. And we see that it's now, well, the syntax isn't working, but it's rendering for us. So let's just instantiate the highlighting. So what we can do is right at the top of our article function, what we can do is we can use a hook, the use effect hook, and we only want to call this on the first load. So this is just going to be equivalent to you know, on mount lifecycle method or something like that, because we can pass in as a second parameter an empty array, so there'll be no variables that's going to call this use effect again other than the initial load. So let's just go ahead and get that, and I might move the React import up to just below the next import. So right here, what we can do is we can use our highlight.js package, and we can say highlight all, and then we can go ahead and call that. And I'm just getting this extra bracket here, and you can see now that we've got this lovely code block. We've got this TypeScript code block, and then that works, and we can toggle between dark mode and light mode. So that's awesome. So what I might do now is I might just from the home page, so we're able to navigate to our home page now. What I want to do is I want to have the ability to go to all of these blog posts. So let's go ahead and set that up. And to start off with, I might create a card component because I'm going to display it within a card. So let's get that. I'm just going to, in the components folder here, I'm just going to have a card.component.tsx, and then I'm going to just create a functional component and export it. This is going to be a card component. This is going to be a functional component with the props, and there's going to be a post of the type post. So let's go ahead and create a post so we're able to import it. So at the root level, once again, I'm going to create a folder here called models, and I'm going to have a file called post.interface.ts, and I'm also going to have a file called metadata.interface.ts because a post is going to have some metadata. So we've sort of seen the shape of a post. If we go to this slug page here, was it there? Basically, we're going to have all of the data. Let's just look at the file. We're going to have all of this metadata. That's going to be in our post, and then we're also going to have the slug, and the slug is exported, well, a prop here for the prop function. So with that said, let's just go ahead and create a simple interface here. So we'll export an interface and we'll call it metadata. And this is going to be nothing more than the properties specified in the metadata or the front matter. So we've got data string, main image URL, and also the excerpt, and they're all strings. This should be date string. So that means in our post interface, we can just go ahead and we can export an interface here called post, and it's just going to be a slug, which is a string, and also some of the metadata, which is of the type metadata, and we can just import that. So we've got our basic types here. Let's just go ahead and close these files. So that means we can come to our card component and we can actually get this post here. So basically we're going to have a post which is of the type post, and I'm destructuring this specific way because of how we can it's going to be passed in as a prop. So basically we know that we can just use a little bit of destructuring here. We can actually just get the slug and the metadata, and this is going to be on the post, and then we can do a little bit of more destructuring here to get the attributes associated with the metadata and the excerpt, and this is coming from the metadata, and that's excerpt. So now I just want to get a card here, and I want to get something that looks like this. So I'm just going to copy this card from Material UI as a starting point, and we've set that up in the previous video. So we can go ahead and get that, and then we're just going to need all of the imports that it uses as well. We can just go ahead and get those in. And then we'll just make a couple of tweaks to put our data in here. So I might just center it. So I'll just give it a margin of auto, and I might just give it a margin top of 2 units. The image, I won't need this here. The height, I might make it a little bit bigger, make it 200. And I'm going to just use the main image URL here. Now this here, this can just be the title. This so this I'm just going to make the excerpt, And I might just have another one of these. And I'll just remove the color here. And this can just be the date string. And then where these buttons are, similar to our header component where we've imported from link. And this is next, so we'll put it right at the top. We can see that we've got this link here. So I'll just copy that. And then I'll come here and I'll get rid of this menu stuff. Now I'll just put in the button there, and then I'll just say read more. And then rather than having just slash here, we'll just build this up. So we'll use a little bit of TypeScript. So we'll just have these curly brackets, and then we'll use the template literal syntax, and it's going to be in the /blog/slug. And then we can once again just pass the href in there. So that's us creating the card component. Let's go ahead and put it on the home page. So we can come back to our index.tsx file here. And basically we're going to need to get our articles once again. So what we can do is we can sort of copy some of the logic that we've already specified in here, but we're going to need to make some adjustments. So let's come to our index page here, and I'm going to get static props. Now I'm going to need to get that type at least, and I'm getting that from next. So we don't need to do all of this, we don't need to do this serializing stuff because we don't actually need the contents, but we will want to get some of the matter. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and we'll get some of these imports. So we can go back to the slug page, and we can just go to the imports there, and we'll just pretty much need these ones here. So let's just copy those in, and I'll just put those here, and this should get rid of a few of our errors. Now we don't need to have any sort of interface or generic interface for our get static props here, and we don't even need any thing we're passing into it. So with this, we want to be able to get the articles directory, and then for the files we want to be able to map those to our blog post and then just have the front matter. So it's going to be quite similar, but rather than having this line here, we'll want to return some props with just the posts, and we'll have something called blog post here where they'll be the blog post. So we'll just go ahead and create that. Now we're basically going to change this. So we're going to have our articles directory, and we can just, from the root of our project, we can just reference the articles folder, and for that folder we can get the files, and we can read the sync, and we can get the articles directory here, and then we can have, this is where we have our blog post variable, which is just going to go through our files. It's going to map the file name which is a string. And for each of those files within the directory, we can just go ahead and we can create this slug. And this is going to be for the file name. We'll just replace the file name and we'll remove the .mdx extension and just replace that with nothing. And then we can have the article, and we can just use the file system to read the file sync, and then we can just path.join, and this is where we want to join the articles folder to the particular file name. So this is including the MDX. We replaced it here, but we set that to a variable, and the file name is as it was passed in for each of the files. So we can just go ahead here and we can just say let's just destructure, because we know from that matter package we can get the metadata. So we'll just rename that to metadata, and we can just go ahead and pass our article in here. And then from this mapping, in each instance, we want to go ahead and just return the slug and the metadata. So that's going to be the shape of each of these posts, or the blog posts, and then we've set a variable equal to all of the posts. Let's see. We don't need this anymore. That was just copied code. So we can just go ahead and save that. And now, because we've used this get static props method, these props can be passed in to this page here. So once again, what we can do here is we can just get our posts, and now we really should be able to just use this function here, infer get static props type, which is going to have the type of get static props. Now I'm not sure exactly why this isn't working, but that should work in theory. Obviously it's not, so what we'll do is we'll just once again do this sort of thing. Just grab that in. Hold on. Okay, so I've realized the mistake here. This inferring get static props type, this should actually be within the here, like that. And I could make that change for here as well. So this here, that is actually in there like that, and then we should be able to get rid of that. Actually, we can get rid of all of that. Let's see here. And that just needs to be like that. So we can get rid of that, and now that works, and we can get rid of that. So that's why that wasn't working. You probably spotted that already. And then in our card component, in our index page, we get that working there like that. Now I'm just consoling logging that out, and we see we get three. We've got 3 articles with the metadata and slug. So all we really need to do is just loop through that and display it on the page. So just below this box here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a div here, and I'm just going to say for each of those posts that we're getting in, I can get rid of that too now. So for each post, we can go and we can just map the particular post. Oh, we'll need post after all. And then we can get the index as a second variable here in the map function. And what we can do is we can just go ahead and render the card component. And recall, well, we can take a key of the index here just to uniquely identify it, and then also the post here, which is of the post type here. And recall that the card component, it takes a post in there like that, post to post, and then it should display that. So in the index file, we're just looping through that. So let's see what that gives us. So below the page here, the home screen here, we can see that we've got these posts here, and it displays all of the images and the information as well. And if we click on any one of those posts, it takes a little while to load in dev mode, but we can see that we've got the post, and it renders the component within the MDX file, and it also shows you the syntax highlighting using highlight.js with the code blob. So that's everything I wanted to do in this video. In the next video, we'll continue to build out some more functionality and pages within our application. So stay tuned for that one, and thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.